In the early morning hours of May 29, 1453, the air above Constantinople trembled with the thunder of cannons. Smoke drifted across the ancient walls that had protected the city for more than 1,000 years. Inside, priests prayed. Soldiers gripped their swords. Emperor Constantine XI prepared to fight not as a ruler on a throne, but as a soldier among his men. By sunrise, the Byzantine Empire to Rome itself would cease to exist. This is the story of the fall of Constantinople. For over a millennium, Constantinople stood as one of the greatest cities in the world. Founded in 330 AD by Emperor Constantine the Great, it was strategically placed between Europe and Asia. Controlling the Bosporus Strait, it was wealthy, cosmopolitan, and heavily fortified. While the Western Roman Empire collapsed in 476 AD, the Eastern Roman Empire, what we call the Byzantine Empire, it preserved Roman law, Greek culture, and Christian theology. Its capital, Constantinople, was protected by the formidable Theodosian Walls, a triple-layered defensive system that had repelled invaders for centuries. But by the 15th century, the empire was a shadow of its former self. Centuries of internal conflict, economic decline, religious division, and repeated wars had weakened it. The Fourth Crusade in 1204 dealt a devastating blow when Western Crusaders sacked Constantinople itself. Although the Byzantines eventually reclaimed the city, the empire never fully recovered. By 1453, the Byzantine Empire was reduced to little more than Constantinople and a few scattered territories. Surrounding it on all sides was a rising power: the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans began as a small Turkish principality in Anatolia during the late 13th century. Under dynamic and ambitious leaders, they expanded rapidly. By the early 1400s, the Ottomans controlled much of the Balkans and Anatolia. They had defeated European crusaders, conquered key trade routes, and built a powerful military machine. In 1451, a 19-year-old sultan named Mehmed II ascended the Ottoman throne. Known to history as Mehmed the Conqueror, he was intelligent, ambitious, and determined to accomplish what previous Muslim rulers had failed to do: capture Constantinople. For Mehmed, the city was more than a strategic prize. It was symbolic. Whoever ruled Constantinople could claim to be the legitimate successor of Rome. It would secure Ottoman dominance and transform their empire into a global power. Mehmed began his preparations immediately. First, he strengthened his navy to control the surrounding waters. Then he constructed a fortress called Rumeli Hisari on the European side of the Bosporus. This fortress allowed the Ottomans to control maritime traffic and cut off aid to Constantinople from the Black Sea. But Mehmed's greatest weapon was artillery. He hired a Hungarian engineer named Orban, who designed enormous cannons capable of firing massive stone balls. One of them, known as the Basilica, could fire projectiles weighing over 600 kilograms. These cannons would be used to bombard the Theodosian walls that had stood unconquered for centuries. Inside Constantinople, Emperor Constantine XI knew the threat was real. He desperately sought help from Western Europe. However, Europe was divided by political rivalries and religious disputes between the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches. Only a small force of foreign volunteers arrived, including about 700 well-trained Genoese soldiers led by Giovanni Giusti. In total, the defenders numbered perhaps 7,000 to 8,000 men. Mehmed's army. Estimates range from 60,000 to over 100,000 soldiers. The odds were overwhelming. On April 6, 1453, the Ottoman army arrived outside Constantinople. The siege had begun. For weeks, massive cannons bombarded the walls. Day after day, stone walls smashed into the ancient fortifications. Each night, Byzantine defenders rushed to repair the damage. The Ottomans launched repeated assaults, but the defenders held firm. The walls, though damaged, remained standing. Meanwhile, the Ottomans faced a major obstacle: the Golden Horn, the natural harbor protecting the northern side of the city. The Byzantines had stretched a heavy iron chain across its entrance, preventing the Ottoman navy from entering. In a brilliant and daring maneuver, Mehmed ordered his ships dragged overland. Using greased logs as rollers, Ottoman forces transported dozens of ships across hills and into the Golden Horn, bypassing the chain entirely. When the Byzantines awoke to see Ottoman ships inside their harbor, morale plummeted. The city was now surrounded by land and sea. By late May, The walls were weakening. Mehmed prepared for a final, massive assault. In the early hours of May 29th, under the cover of darkness, the Ottomans attacked. Wave after wave advanced toward the walls. First came irregular troops, intended to exhaust the defenders. Then came more disciplined Anatolian soldiers. Finally, Mehmed sent in his elite corps, the Janissaries, highly trained infantry loyal directly to the Sultan. The fighting was brutal and chaotic. Giovanni Giustiniani, the Genoese commander, was severely wounded. His withdrawal from the battlefield caused panic among the defenders. Without his leadership, resistance began to falter. At a critical moment, a small postern gate, possibly the Kirkaporta gate, was left unsecured. Ottoman troops broke through. Soon, the Ottomans breached the main walls. Emperor Constantine XI refused to flee. According to tradition, he removed his imperial insignia and charged into battle, disappearing into the fighting. His body was never definitively identified. By mid-morning, Ottoman forces had taken control of the city. After 1,123 years, the Roman Empire had finally fallen. As was customary in medieval warfare, the city was subjected to looting for 3 days. Many citizens were killed or enslaved. Churches were destroyed. The great cathedral Hagia Sophia, once the heart of Orthodox Christianity, was converted into a mosque. But Mehmed II did not intend to destroy Constantinople. He intended to transform it. He declared the city the new capital of the Ottoman Empire. He encouraged repopulation, inviting Muslims, Christians, and Jews to settle there. Over time, Constantinople, now increasingly called Istanbul, became one of the greatest cities in the Islamic world. The Ottomans would rule from there for nearly 500 years. The fall of Constantinople was more than the end of an empire. It marked a turning point in world history. First, it symbolized the end of the medieval era. Many historians consider 1453 to be the closing chapter of the Middle Ages. Second, it reshaped global trade. With Ottoman control over key land routes between Europe and Asia, European powers sought alternative sea routes to the east. This search helped spark the age of exploration. Within decades, explorers like Christopher Columbus and Vasco da Gama would set sail, forever changing global history. Third, the fall led to a migration of Greek scholars to Western Europe. They brought ancient manuscripts and classical knowledge with them, contributing to the intellectual movement we now call the Renaissance. Finally, the event cemented the Ottoman Empire as a dominant superpower. Under Mehmed and his successors, the empire expanded into southeastern Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Behind the grand narrative of empires and warfare lies a human story. For the defenders, it was a final stand. They fought not just for territory, but for faith, identity, and legacy. For the Ottomans, it was the fulfillment of prophecy and ambition. For ordinary citizens, it was terror and uncertainty, families hiding in churches, merchants abandoning homes, children caught in the chaos of conquest. History often remembers dates and leaders, but events like this are lived by people. Mehmed II emerged from the siege as one of history's great conquerors. He adopted the title Kaiser-i-Rom, Caesar of Rome, claiming continuity with the Roman emperors. He restructured administration, promoted arts and architecture, and transformed Istanbul into a thriving imperiate capital. Unlike many conquerors, Mehmed had demonstrated political pragmatism. He allowed religious minorities to maintain their faith under the Ottoman millet system, creating a complex but relatively stable multicultural society. His victory at Constantinople defined his legacy forever. The fall of Constantinople was both an ending and a beginning. It ended the Byzantine Empire, the last direct link to ancient Rome. It ended centuries of Christian imperial rule in the Eastern Mediterranean, but it also began a new chapter: the rise of Ottoman supremacy, the transformation of global trade, and the dawn of a more interconnected world. On that May morning in 1453, as the Ottoman banners rose above the shattered walls, a new era was born. Empires fall, powers rise, cities change hands, but the echoes of Constantinople's fall still resonate through history, reminding us how a single city at the crossroads of continents can alter the course of the world.